Amongst all the destruction and heartbreak that came with Thanos collecting all 6 Infinity Stones in Avengers Infinity War, it was actually kinda easy to overlook one huge question. Where did Thanos get the Mind Stone in the first place? It's a question that never really came up in normal conversation between the characters, which I guess is fair. I imagine it's hard to talk to Thanos about anything other than bringing balance to the universe. But obtaining the Mind Stone must have been no easy task. Where was Vision's life battery originally hiding, and how did Thanos obtain it? Although we can't say for sure, we've got a pretty good idea. So let's begin before Thanos turns us to dust for spoiling it. Oh no, we're dust now, no. When we first saw the Mind Stone in the MCU, we didn't know what we were looking at. While working for Thanos, Loki was given a special scepter that not only looked dangerous but also had the special power of making Hawkeye irrelevant for almost the entire movie. Okay, fine, it did more than that, as Loki was able to brainwash people into doing his evil bidding, and it turned Phil Coulson into a shish kebab. Oh, poor Phil. At the time, all eyes were on the powerful Tesseract, as we became aware that it was in fact an Infinity Stone. But later on, it was confirmed that Loki's scepter was also housing one of the stones. The scepter became a huge plot point in the second Avengers movie, as our heroes had to retrieve it after it fell into Hydra's weird octopus hands. Then we learned that the scepter wasn't necessarily special, but rather what mattered was what was inside the scepter. It turned out to be one of the 6 all-powerful Infinity Stones, and would go on to bring Vision to life. But where did it come from in the first place? I think there are 2 equally plausible theories on where the Mind Stone could have come from. The first comes from an unofficial tie-in novel detailing Thanos' backstory. In between Infinity War and Endgame, a novel from author Barry Lyga was released titled Thanos Titan Consumed, and it basically served as the Mad Titan's backstory. Lyga appeared to be working closely with Marvel Studios, and it was announced that the book was the first canon MCU tie-in novel. But after the publisher announced that, Marvel Studios came a-knocking on their door and made them retract that statement. So as of now, the novel is officially labeled as non-canon, even though the story lines up perfectly with Infinity War, and it would explain a whole lot. The plot details Thanos' origins, and showed how he got so obsessed with the stones in the first place. After witnessing his own planet destroy itself, Thanos set out to make sure that that never happened anywhere else. The Infinity Stones at that time were just considered a legend, and the only one that was thought to actually exist was secured on Asgard. So Thanos launched an attack on Asgard that didn't go so great for Thanos. Because he didn't have his major forces yet, he was easily defeated. Thanos then pushed the thought of Infinity Stones out of his mind for years, and continued with his quest to wipe out half the galaxy. But the Mad Titan realized this was taking forever, and decided to refocus on the Infinity Stones legend. His quest brought him to the far reaches of a destroyed galaxy, where he encountered a strange and powerful being known as the Lore Speaker. It was this guy who revealed the whole history of the stones to Thanos, and then dropped a gigantic bombshell. The Lore Speaker had his own Infinity Stone. In his possession, the Lore Speaker had the scepter, and he used it to brainwash Thanos in an attempt to transfer his own consciousness into Thanos' body. Fortunately for Thanos, wow, did I really just say that? Fortunately for Thanos, Nebula and Gamora arrived, and saved their adoptive father. Thanos ended up eliminating the Lore Speaker and taking the scepter for himself, realizing that although it was powerful, it had a limited range, which pushed Thanos even more to find the rest of the stones and use them all together. Now, all of that makes sense, but since that novel is now officially considered non-canon, could there be another explanation? I think there could be. Think of it this way. Consider how there seems to be a connection between the stones and the Celestials in the MCU. We know that the Celestials created the Eternals, and in the comics, Titan was an eternal colony. So consider this. What if the Celestials created Titan in order to guard the scepter? If the scepter was always on Titan, then that gives Thanos a somewhat more tragic story. We know that being around the scepter for long periods of time can warp your mind, as evidenced by Loki and even the Avengers. So what if one of the reasons why Titan ended up destroying itself was because of its extensive exposure to the Mind Stone? This would create a fascinating motivation for Thanos. If his homeworld was wiped out thanks to the corruptive power of the Mind Stone, then it would be a little ironic that he would obsess over collecting all the Infinity Stones in order to save the entire universe. That sounds like a much better theory than him acquiring the staff in some other location, right? And if the scepter was on Titan the entire time and proved to be corruptive and dangerous, then it would also explain one of the MCU's biggest plot holes. A lot of fans like to joke about how if Thanos was really after all the Infinity Stones, then why did he give the scepter to Loki and the Avengers? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it reeks of the MCU coming up with the idea of the Mind Stone being in the scepter after the first movie was released instead of having it all planned out. But they could fix that with this new explanation. If Thanos had a personal connection with the scepter, meaning if he was aware of how it was a factor in his homeworld being destroyed, then it would make total sense for him to give it to Loki. It's now confirmed that the scepter was also making Loki more evil and twisted, and Thanos would know this if the scepter was on his planet. So although it's never been officially confirmed anywhere, I'm gonna go ahead and start believing this theory. It not only makes a lot of sense, but it makes Thanos an even smarter villain.